Welcome, superstar. We are on this journey together to discover who you really are, why you're really here, and what you really want to build in the world. And so this video is all about your core values and how your values will impact your business. Let's go. First, I'm going to dive into the importance of the values, why this even matters. You might not even realize how much this affects and impacts every aspect of your life. Then we're going to dive into what I've discovered with myself and with my clients are the biggest problems around misalignment of values. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own story in this particular area. And then finally, I'm going to give you some ideas for you to clarify your values and how to use that in your business. Let's go. Let's first talk a little bit about why it's so important to understand and define your values. One of the biggest problems I see is that most of us, this was my story, and I see this with many, if not all of my clients, inherit our values from our parents. Now that's all well and good. And as a matter of fact, I appreciate many of the values that I learned from my parents. However, because I adopted them and integrated them without any intentionality, there were some values that I was living my life by that really were not my own, that I had really never taken the time to examine and ensure that they really were my values, rather than just something I learned or picked up through osmosis from my family, which means they're not intentional. When we inherit them and never examine them, they're not intentional. They're really accidental in a lot of ways. And we have to recognize that we're really at the mercy of where we grew up, who we grew up with, and all of their beliefs and their ways of looking at the world. So as adults, it's really important, especially when we're doing this kind of personal development, business development work, to look at all of our values and see if the values that we are living by are really aligned with the values we actually truly believe in. And there may be a big difference between them, especially if we grew up in a very traditional or conservative type of household. I'll tell you a little bit about my story, and you've heard this before, so I won't belabor it. But the quick version is my parents, hardworking Cuban-American immigrants, my dad, refugee from Cuba. And so they had such a strong value for hard work, success, and achievement, which I adopted, which was great. I'm glad I have those values. I'm glad that I learned how to work hard and achieve and succeed. But I was living my entire life based on those as my primary values. Also, I was a little kid who really loved to be active, self-expressed. I loved to sing. I loved to dance. I loved to do talent shows and gymnastics and create and do art. And in my family, those things were not valued. I remember once telling my dad that I wanted to be a choreographer when I grew up. And he was like, "Are you crazy? You can never make money with that. Artists starve. You can't make money being an artist or a dancer or a singer." It was the same story when I said I wanted to be a writer, and the same story when I said I wanted to be a dancer. So pretty much everything that I said I wanted to do, my dad said, "No, you can't do that. You'll never make money." So I took on the value that making money was the most important value and having safety and security. Now, I'm not blaming my dad. He came from a background where that was really important. His family lost everything. And so his whole world was built around being safe and secure, and he wanted that for me too. But ultimately, once I started doing this work, I was able to recognize that that is not my highest value. Actually, one of my highest values is self-expression. And for self-expression, especially in this day and age, you need to take risks. You're not going to be able to be totally safe if you want to be fully self-expressed. There are people that are not going to like it. You might get attacked by people who don't agree with you. And that is okay now for me. Now that I've done this work, I recognize that that's okay. And so having my core values clarified has helped me really get clear about also what I want to deliver to the world. I have this core value of self-expression. That's part of, if not the primary thing that I lead others in. How to become fully self-expressed, how to become a thought leader, how to have an aligned, congruent brand, how to put your brand out into the world, how to not live your life based on what other people think you should be doing, but living it for yourself. Freedom, self-expression, these are all my values, which actually are kind of lower, well, freedom, but self-expression is kind of lower on the totem pole, if not way down at the bottom for my parents. Now, before I dive into helping you discover your core values, I do want to invite you to take the opportunity, if you're on YouTube right now, like this video, subscribe to my channel, maybe even post a comment below. And if you're in my retreat and doing the process of preparing to come in to our Business Breakthrough Retreat, then go ahead and download the worksheet that's in the Thinkific library. All right, let's keep going. So what are core values? The way I look at them, they are principles that you live by. They are the things that matter most to you that you will not compromise no matter what. Now, I want to make a distinction here that I think is really important, that there's a difference between your true, actual lived values and your aspirational values. And that's because a lot of times we say we have this aspirational value that we're not really living into just yet. So in order to deal with that distinction, we're just going to capture all of them. And then later on in this process, we're going to look at each one and say, am I fully living this yet? Another way to look at values are that they are the standards or the parameters that you live by. So for example, if you have a value of freedom, then you want to organize your business around having freedom in your business, right? If you have an aspirational value, let's say of freedom, but then you're a slave to your business, then you're out of alignment with your values. There's a lack of congruency there, and that's going to create some problems. So we want to look at your values not only as principles that you live by, but also standards that you implement. And you might need to create some boundaries in order to be able to live into those standards. But we'll talk about boundaries and standards later. Now, if you're following the business model that I'm using and you want to create retreats and masterminds and group coaching programs, then you want to consider that whatever values you hold and whatever values you're really living are the same values that are going to end up in your community and your culture, because you're going to lead from those values. Now, another way to think about your values and another way that they're going to play out in your business, if you're following the model that I'm using, is that you're going to use them as a litmus test, so to speak, for who comes into your events, your retreats, your group coaching programs, your culture. Now, whatever values you hold aspirationally, and really, more importantly, the values that you're actually living are probably what's going to attract people in. And one way to improve your own experience of your business, to have more fun and more joy, is to raise your standards and create new boundaries for who you let in. Let me give you an example, because that might be a little bit too conceptual. When I started my business and I wasn't really clear about my values, and I would work with anybody, kind of pimp myself out based on whoever had the money to pay me. I wasn't holding any core values or any standards that were aligned with those values. I was just pay me, whoever could pay me. So for example, I started doing work with a pharmaceutical company. And this company was doing outreach and calling. They were calling old people, and they were getting old people enrolled into diabetic, like getting them to change their diabetic supply thing to them. Now, that's not terrible. That's not bad. But ultimately, once I started doing this work and I started cleaning up my own health and my own medical situation, I started realizing that I personally have a core value for more holistic treatments. And I have a core value of eating healthy and taking good care of myself and really honoring my body. And what I found at this company, in hindsight, I didn't realize it at the time, the reason that I felt so out of alignment, out of sync with the work that I was doing with them, was because they were really, I think, ultimately kind of preying on older people. And they were sort of making money and profiting from a very unhealthy way of living and an unhealthy way of being. I'm not judging, I'm just saying that it was out of alignment with the way I wanted to operate. But I didn't realize it at the time, and it made the experience no fun. I used to dread doing the work that I was doing there. I used to procrastinate it, and I just didn't enjoy it. It was no fun. And I know now that that was because I was out of sync with my values. Now, from a current perspective, I have my values clear, And I would have right away been like, nope, not a fit. See you later, and opened up the space for something else that was more aligned to come in. Okay, so let's get to the process of determining your core values. Now, below in the notes, you're gonna find a long list of values. Now, if you're in my retreat, this is as a download. It's a worksheet download. You can get it from the Thinkific library. But if you're watching me on YouTube, then go ahead and go down to the notes, and you're gonna see a whole long list of values. It's not an exhaustive list, meaning you can definitely find other values, but it's a pretty big and complete list, at least to get you started. And what I invite you to do is go through that list and just write down any values that resonate with you, as many as resonate with you. So get them all down, go through one by one, and just write down all the values that you feel drawn to. And then go ahead and pause me while you do that, and then come back and I'll tell you what to do with that list. Okay, now you've got your list of words that really resonate with you, and I want you to go ahead and put those words in order of importance. So the most important one first, and the least important of those is last. And then I want you to take that list, however many you have, and just reduce it and reduce it and reduce it. Maybe even notice that there are some that can be combined, that they are kind of the same thing or similar, and just get it down to about 5 core values. Yes, you can do 6, or you can do 7 if you have to, and of course you can do 3 or 4, but I just want to get it down to a really manageable, clear size. In Spanish we say, el que abarca mucho aprieta poco. It means if you try to open your arms too wide, you can't squeeze very tightly. Kind of makes sense in English. But the point is that you want to keep it narrow so that you can really grab onto those values and do something with them, and like really keep them near and dear to you, so you're really clear all the time. Like, does this align with those values? Does this align? Does this align? Yes or no? And then another thing you might think about is go ahead, and once you have it down to about 5, just define each one. What does this mean to you? Exactly what does that value mean? And also, how does it look played out in your business and in your life? So for example, let's say you have a value of freedom, which so many of us entrepreneurs have. What does freedom mean to you? Does it mean the freedom to travel? Does it mean the freedom not to travel? Does it mean that you get to pick up your kid from school every day? Does it mean that you take Fridays off? Does it mean that you take 2 months off in the summer as a sabbatical? Does it mean that you get to change what you do every day so that you're not sitting at a desk doing the same thing day after day? What does freedom mean to you? How does it look played out in your business? So just make sure that you define each one of these values so that you're really clear about what it looks like to live it, and you can help to assess opportunities as they come across your desk, and prospects and clients. Make sure that they're aligned with your values. And one thing I'll caution you is, you have to be willing to live by this value first. So if you're gonna hold this value for others, then you really need to first hold this value for yourself. So what that looks like, for example, is if you have a value for freedom for yourself and you're focused on that, then I would invite you to consider making sure that you have that value for freedom for all of your employees too. That doesn't mean it has to look exactly the same for them as for you. You certainly don't want an employee that never works and that only shows up for an hour a day or takes Fridays off, unless, of course, you agree to that. But just make sure that you are in alignment and living that value in all aspects of your business and your life. All right, so if you're in my retreat, then you've got that worksheet. I'm curious to see what you came up with when we get together for our retreat prep call. And if you're not and you're interested in my programs, then you can find out more at superstarbusinessbreakthrough.com.